Okay, let's see. There's Baptist and Methodist and Lutherans and Presbyterians and Assembly of God and Church of Christ and plus a whole host of subcategories of all those groups. Where did they all come from? And do we need them? Hang around, we'll talk about it. Look, I get it. It can really be confusing, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with church life. In fact, I can see how the presence of a myriad of denominations could lead you to believe it's impossible to figure out what Christianity, true Christianity, really is. The fact is, branches within Christianity began to emerge almost immediately. Christianity was exclusively Jewish in its earliest years. In fact, it was so identified as a sect of Judaism that it enjoyed the protections Rome provided for the Jewish religion for quite a while. But as Gentiles began to be reached with the message of Jesus, Christianity began to be seen as something new, but with some churches reflecting a more Jewish culture and practice, and some reflecting a more Gentile culture and practice. In fact, in Acts 15, leaders convened in Jerusalem to hammer out a way for these two branches of Christianity to remain in fellowship with one another. So, literally within decades of Christ's resurrection, you have a presence of a kind of prototype of denominations. Of course, after the formation of the historic creeds of the Christian faith, especially in the 3rd and 4th centuries, Christianity began to coalesce under the banner of what became the Roman Catholic Church. And that remained the singular expression of Christianity for the next 600 years. But that doesn't mean that differences and debate didn't exist within Catholicism. Quietly, theological, cultural, and even political differences bubbled for centuries until it came to a boil in 1054, when the Christians of the West and the Christians of the East formally separated into two distinct expressions of faith, Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. And that rocked on for another 500 years until the Protestant Reformation, which itself branched into dozens of different directions over matters of, again, theology, culture, and politics. And on it went until today there are over 45,000 denominations in the world, according to the Global Center for the Study of Christianity. That's a lot, especially when you realize there are only a little over 31,000 verses in the Bible. So do we need that many? And let's ask the real question, is it wrong, sinful to have that many? I mean, shouldn't we all be able to agree on what Christianity is? And here's my answer. The vast majority of those 45,000 different groups actually do agree on the essential core of Christianity. Salvation rooted in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, accessed through repentance and faith in Jesus. And yet there are thousands of expressions of that core of the faith. And part of the reason we have so many groups is cultural. As Christianity made inroads into every tribe and tongue and nation, the core of Christianity remained intact, but it began to be expressed and celebrated in ways unique to the culture. But there is no denying that theological differences are a big reason so many denominations exist today. That doesn't mean, however, that there's a disagreement on the essential core of Christianity. For instance, Baptists and Presbyterians and Lutherans all agree in salvation by grace through faith in Jesus, but they disagree on the meaning and proper expression of baptism. So there's a sense in which denominations preserve unity among Christians. It would be very difficult for people who have different convictions about baptism to be a part of the same church family. Every time a baby was born, there'd be a conflict. Should we baptize them as infants? What are we baptizing them for? Shouldn't we wait until they personally profess faith? Do you see what I mean? Denominations allow us to accept that we are all followers of Jesus while giving us the freedom to live out secondary theological differences and cultural preferences without the nonstop conflict these matters would inevitably produce in one single church. So think of denominations like an extended family. We share the same spiritual DNA, and we'll all pray for one another and rejoice with one another and see one another when we get to the family reunion in heaven. But differences in culture and how we think about secondary theological issues make it best, for the sake of peace, to live in separate houses. I want to talk about something else? Just ask by emailing justask@bluevalleychurch.org, or check out our Just Ask playlist here on the Blue Valley Church YouTube channel or previous reels on the Blue Valley Instagram.